New video now from a shooting involving Albuquerque police. Sasha Lent.
Join Revolution Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m.
Spoke to a
Eastern
witness who was
on Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
We did not engage in conflict that was out of line with our mission.
Is it disloyalty? Is it sedition? Is it treason to oppose the hands of tyranny? Never!
I will never send troops anywhere on a mission of that kind without telling them that if somebody shoots at them, they can darn well shoot back.
I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty! Oh, give me!
A dark cloud is finally lifting across the world as U.S. military intelligence and their global partners are destroying the deep state criminal power structure that has ruled over our planet for hundreds of years.
We are free with the God-given right, and we shall not yield that right to any power on earth.
Hi, I'm Scott McKay. The world is at, and I am your host on The Tipping Point on Revolution Radio, where every Monday from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, we bring you the latest in this ensuing takedown of this global criminal empire.
That's an image of strength.
You'll get the raw, hard truth here on The Tipping Point. So come join us Mondays, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern in Studio B at revolution.radio.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it.
Right! You tell them I'm coming! And hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio.
Adapt 2030 Mini Ice Age Conversations covers changes in our climate due to a new and intensifying grand solar minimum. In the media, overlooking, downplaying, or burying cold weather changes occurring on our planet. This is in order to keep the global warming agenda steaming full speed ahead. I do this podcast and radio program because we need to begin conversations on how to adapt our food growing strategies long before 2030 as agricultural zones shift, affecting global crop output, but very few mainstream media outlets are talking about the most important issue of our time, cold weather crop losses. Our sun is going through a 400-year cycle, which has effects on our weather patterns as our magnetosphere weakens and the jet streams go out of flow. It's not CO2, it's not you, it's the sun. Are you ready to thrive in the grand solar minimum? Then join me for mini Ice Age Conversations. I'm your host, David Dubyne, creator of the Adapt 2030 Mini Ice Age 2015 to 2035 video series. And I do welcome you this evening on this beautiful blue planet with this colors changing sun from yellow to white and now tinting toward the blue star Kachina or other inbound comets at the end of the year. So many things happening. It's difficult to even begin a topic because I had gone away for 4 days, pretty much turned off my devices. And I went up to Polyface Farms up in Virginia. I drove up there to see Joel Salatin's place on his sustainability of how he's running cattle with turkey, broiler chickens for meat chickens, and then also mobile laying houses for different types of birds, like the old Dominic heritage variety. But how they used that in the pastures and moved everything. So I went up there for a few days, and got into some camping along a river for a minute. Did some canoeing, and I had a chance to decompress for just a few days, took it off, completely disconnected. I mean, really completely disconnected for 4 days. And it is amazing. After that 4 days, I come back in today, trying to look through the news to do my regular channel to put a video together. And it seems like months of news has happened in just 4 days. It's hard to keep. I didn't notice the difficulty of keeping up with it until I took a break from keeping up with it. And I came back and it's like entering a completely different sphere of things. It's so amplified in just a few days. It is truly amazing, the amplification. Now, I think about gradualism in the amplification. Each day it gets a little more tense, You don't notice the difference because that tidal wave of new info is at you every day. But stepping away from it, coming back, I'm like, oh my. Are we still on the planet, this beautiful blue planet that we're swirling around on? I'm here with Ransom, Godwin, 420 TV, Freedomist Films. We're going to talk all things strange tonight. So, Ransom, I think it might be one of those go deep, Rubik's Cube of the mind, different layer cakes down into reality type of evenings, but that's just me.
All right. Well, we can do that. I mean, it's not even hard to do that in today's world. I mean,
you're right. It's easy. It's easy.
It's a cloudy thing now. I mean, like I can go over and turn on the TV and watch antenna television, like the local news broadcast or whatever, and they're playing their shows. Or you could go to streaming, or you could read the news headlines. All of them have the same exact topics. It started to make me nauseous in the way that everything is connected. Like it's so controlled now. It's really spooky, really. I mean, it's the same topic. No matter which direction you go, you're going to find the same things. It's like, I'm sure you've seen the meme about the next new thing, whatever it is. I'm for that next new thing, I guess. I mean, so I can fit in with the Borg reality that we're living in. I've been looking all over the place, and here's a good headline from Paul Joseph Watson. Top fact checker USA Today forced to delete articles over fabricated stories. And we're not just talking about one or two. We're talking about at least 23 articles that, were caught onto. God knows how many others from all of these other news outlets are just basically making up fairy tales for you to believe in. And that's the distraction now, right?
Ransom, before you go, Did he get fired from his position right away after the discovery? Is that right?
Probably. I mean, I'm surprised they didn't fire the Google guy. He's been all over the headlines too. I don't think they're ever going to get punished or fired for writing fake stuff because the White House does it. I mean, the White House is one of the biggest fabricators of fictional fairy tales that you can find right now. I mean, they just, constantly make up stuff. I saw one funny thing the other day at a press meeting where the press secretary, said that Biden has a plan to reduce gas prices. And the reporter says, but you just said that Biden doesn't control the gas prices, and she froze up because the logic was overwhelming, that she just caught in a big nonsensical statement. They're just making statements like an algorithm wrote them. All you have to do is use all the buzzwords, key topics, and people think you're really intellectual when you don't say anything. A prime example is I dare anyone that thinks they have half a brain cell to go watch Kamala Harris, the vice president of the United States, talk about any topic and see if you can actually follow what she's saying. She says a lot of big words, but she doesn't actually form sentences that have context, meaning, or ideas in them. And, it kind of connects down to the basic level. I've been on a binge today of watching like different man on the streets from across the country, where they just ask them basic questions about knowledge that I thought everybody was about, because I'll be honest, for most of my life thought I was on the lower end of knowledge, IQ, all of that stuff. Turns out not really so much. Not to brag, but when I'm comparing myself to other people, then I wonder what's going on here, because I didn't think I was that bright. I was watching.
Stop there for a second.
Yeah.
Give me an example of a question, and I'll see if I can answer it too. Like these men on the streets, I watched a fair few of those too, and they're asking like, what's Independence Day for? No, I don't know, just a holiday. And like they ask the most ridiculous, easy questions, like who was the first president of the United States, and people just don't know it. What year was the country founded? They don't know it. And it's just like simple stuff like that. So what was an example of a question that was asked? Quiz me, Ransom.
The really good one I saw today, the guy was just asking basic stuff like, who fought in the Civil War? And like 90% of the people they were asking, and I'm talking about from high schoolers into the 30s, they didn't know. One guy said, George Washington. And he was like, okay, who did he fight against? Spain. It's like, what? They're just making up stuff. Or they would ask, random people, and I don't expect people to be great at math, but they would be like, what's 3 times 3 times 3? And almost 100% of people said 9. Yeah, of course, it's 27, because they can't do basic math. And then they started asking geography questions, like real basic ones. How many continents are there? What continent are you on? How many
7 North America.
Yeah, right. Well, these are nonsensical questions to us. I mean, the answers like pops into your mind at lightning speed, but these people didn't even know which countries were on the North American continent that they didn't even know they were on. And these are people that are
U.S., Canada, and Mexico.
Right. None of them could answer that. Not one of them. People were answering continents like Antarctica, or, I even give people a break for not knowing countries around the world. But, like one of the questions.
Me too. You got to travel to know them. That's for sure.
I think one of the countries was like, name one country in Africa, and I'm thinking already, boom, 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 boom. It goes off. And they couldn't even name one. They couldn't even name one single country. And I'm thinking, none of you guys have ever heard of Egyptians or the Great Pyramids. I mean, like one subject that would at least make you know about one country.
Like Morocco or, something like, does nobody know ancient history? Syria?
No. Like, they don't know.
That's in the Middle East. My bad on that one. But if we're going over to Morocco and in Egypt and further down in Sudan, there's a series of pyramids in Sudan as well. You got to check these pyramids out in Sudan. If you haven't seen them, they're up from where the Nile River starts. They're higher up in the highlands. And before it was a massive society up there. I forget the name of the pyramids. They're super incredible straight vertical ones. You couldn't climb those like you could the ones in Egypt. But Sudan's got a massive long history too. That whole northern African continent part has a massive, massive long history. And that empire of Ghana was trading through Central Africa and also the full Sahel, where we consider like Sahara Desert right now. There were lakes up there, rivers, full salt routes, trade routes, and everything, just as recent as 600 AD, all the way until 600 years ago. So, I mean, what's different in our history there? I'm sorry to ramble like that. Yeah, but there's so many countries. Okay, so South Africa, Namibia, Botswana, and how about the Kalahari ruins out there as well, coming down the Okavango Delta? And look at Niger and Kenya and Tanzania. And, I mean, there's a lot of countries that are steeped in history there.
Right, and you think somebody, just one of these kids would have learned something, or even adults. Yeah, and I'm not even saying kids, because they were young adults, all of them up into their mid-30s, and they didn't know the history here. They don't know who fought in the Civil War. They don't. That tells me that all of these people that are out there raging against the machine, destroying their cities, tearing down statues, they don't even know why. They don't know who. All they know is there was slavery, white people, America, bad. I mean, that's the simplistic thought pattern going on out there. I mean, and most of these people, they don't know where they're at in the universe, much less when. And none of them knew who the president or vice president was. I think one guy got Biden. And I'm thinking, if you turned on the television, you would think that all of these topics were at the top of your head for all of these people. But it turns out no one's watching that. They don't even know the propaganda that, there's a lot of propaganda I worry about, because I know it's completely false, and that's what's being driven as narrative. So most of these people are only getting information through shows and movies, which, by the way, like we've been pointing out, is the same exact topics for everything. Like if something just happened in history recently, you can find a movie several years back that already had that in it, multiple times over. And that's where we're at. We're in a completely delusional state of fiction. And it's crazy to think that most of these people can, and some of them do, vote. So even if you believe that the election system worked, that ought to scare you just as much as believing it doesn't work. And then now we got all of these, sci-fi movies they're trying to bring to us, to life. Like we got monkeypox and all of these things. And meanwhile, if you knew little bits of history, you would see that these are all reruns, right? They're all reruns. I saw an article right here. 79 years after the brutal battle to oust Japanese, a remote piece of U.S. territory is now at the center of attention again. 90% of people wouldn't even have a guess on which piece of property that might be. But they're talking about Alaska, and that brings us into what's going on. We are full-scale throttling towards World War III, and I think it's going to be a 50-50 fictional real war. And what I mean by that is that anything that anybody sees in any country is not going to be the truth. It's just going to be some kind of propaganda from the local, whoever, is in charge of the propaganda there. In China right now, they're doing some really weird things. And here, let me find the articles, and we'll get into like how strange is the world that you actually live in. And my opinion is everything you see in China is less than a decade away here. They're just going to slap it on you. And if you've been watching the gun control thing, you will realize that it doesn't matter who you vote for. They're all going to vote for the same thing, whatever the agenda is.
Yeah, and you got to wonder in these agendas and news stories, what releases are being released? They talk about UFO disclosure and whatnot. But what disclosure has been disclosed in the last, say, 6 months or 8 months of heavy pounding news at all times? The AI. The AI is now live and sentient. But then I also saw something where those, robo-dogs, they had like 400 of them in a room dancing in unison. And they were going into mass production of those robo-dogs that you see police have, or the yellow one called Spot that you saw with Boston Dynamics back in the day. They've shrunken them down.
Yeah.
Like hundreds and hundreds in a room, like the disclosure of full robotics, and then showing the inside of some of these warehouses where everything is replaced by robots moving at lightning speed. And then you realize how, inefficient a human is and how it's all being phased out. But these are the kind of releases that are given, UFO disclosure, or, our AI program is now sentient to the point of being an 8-year-old child thinking. That's a huge disclosure too. Like, what happens there? That thing was 8-year-old like last week. It's probably 16-year-old by this week. It's like learning at breakneck speed. And I can't believe it's probably been like that for decades, plural, when something sentient popped out of our devices.
I totally agree with that. And the general public just has no idea what kind of technology is out there. I've been showing it for the last 5 years, and people don't connect the dots. But here's like another example of one of the technologies that you can use in conjunction with another technology. And this also gives you a good look at what the world government is really going to look like, how micromanaged they want it. Chinese researchers build mind-reading device that detects when men watch porn. That sounds silly and it's joking, but if you have a mind-reading device that can detect when people are thinking anything, which they do, and there's several different versions. There's some that can show emotion. There's one that actually will write out the words that you are thinking in your mind. And when you start realizing how controlled they really are, you can realize how intertwined human beings already are. So there's a certain number of people out there there's just no hope for. They're so like out of the matrix. They even say that there's people so hopelessly intertwined with the matrix that they'll fight to protect it because they don't even realize that it exists, and they think you're the crazy one because you see it.
You're describing the general population of like seriously well over 90%.
Yeah. And it's becoming more and more apparent. I think it's increasing. And here's another article that kind of shows you the direction of what they're going to be doing here. And it's always in a friendly way when they're pushing their robotics. And keep in mind that those robot dogs that you were talking about, any number of those can be installed with an AI, not very different from Sophia or the one that Google's talking about, that can control that device. But on top of that, you can attach anything to that. You can put a 203 grenade launcher on it. You can put a 60 cal machine gun on it. You can put several M4s or AR-15s on that thing. And what's funny is I predicted that, and then somebody did it as a joke with a paintball gun, and then of course the military industrial complex went ahead and showed that they've been doing that for a while. And of course they could attach stuff to their robots. And then Boston Dynamics comes out and shows you how fast they move. Shortly after that, Google tells you how far advanced they can think. And then look at this. Can a future fleet of robots clean up the ocean? And who's saying that? The Chinese are saying that. But keep in mind that they have an entire AI island. They have boats with drone swarms. They have giant AI fish, submarines, all kinds of things that they've been going in the AI direction. And they've been making it friendly looking, just like Sophia, that's really, unassuming and non-threatening because it's only half a torso with no hair on a table. That's the joke. That's the 50 years ago robot. What they have now is, quantum computing that they can attach to these AIs who can run all of the software. So to say that, movies like the Terminator, when they show all of that as science fiction, is actually quite naive, and it's a lie. It's not. And meanwhile, human beings are being devolved, in my opinion. You can get into a lot of different subjects, but just one simple one: having vitamin D deficiency directly linked to dementia, study finds, right? So people like us already knew it. I already take a vitamin D supplement. I go out in the sun. But most people don't even realize that all of the vitamins and the food and everything that they're eating, it doesn't even matter if you don't have enough vitamin D. Why didn't your doctors tell you that when everybody got sick? Why didn't your doctors tell you about dieting, exercise? They never talk about these things, which leads you to believe that they have an agenda. And when we start seeing viral spread of monkeypox now at 142 in the U.S., and now they're saying, you know what? It doesn't just spread through bodily fluids. You can get it off of surfaces. You can get it off of clothing, towels, etc. Gross. But and this is just my opinion, and I don't want to, offend anybody, but if you look back at the AIDS epidemic in the 80s, it came out later that most of the people that became HIV positive happened to be people that were homosexuals and had got a blood transfusion, and somehow it got directed into a certain community. And it looks like this might be the case now with the monkeypox. They find a certain community, they give it to them, and they allow them to be the carrier. And then they propagandize us with monkeypox, which, if you know about monkeypox, you'll know that there's several military industrial strains that they've made that kill like 95+% of anybody that gets it. Also, we're having these polio outbreaks, meningitis outbreaks, all of these things that we supposedly were in control of. And then you look at another example. I use China often because I really think that we're not that far apart. There's only a delusion of freedom over here separating the two countries. But anyway, Beijing kids must take PCR COVID-19 tests to be able to play outside in the park. So they can't even go to the park. Men can't, do anything private. Women aren't going to be doing anything that, like they keep thinking that they're controlling their body. I saw a woman out in front of the White House lawn that chained herself, and it said that she'll never be a slave, and because she believes in what she believes is her right or whatever. I don't want to get into that too much because I know everybody gets mad. But the idea that she thought she was free, and her shirt saying "I'll never be a slave," 5 minutes later she was in handcuffs, and I wondered, did she really realize the irony of what was going on there? That for being in a public place paid for by the public, regardless of her opinion. You don't have to agree with it or disagree with it, but she has the right to, say it, be there. But now they have all the government fenced off, protected, militarized outside, and big walls going around it. Why are they doing that? They're doing that because they are afraid of the public at this point, because they know there's a certain amount, a percentage of people that aren't brain dead zombies like everybody else. And they've actually looked into things on their own, and they know when they see a lie, and they know when articles don't make sense. And it doesn't take long to look into almost anything, from school shootings to diseases, to find out that what you're seeing on television is less than 20% of the truth, if at all. I don't know, I might get banned on YouTube again for saying that they don't tell the truth, but that's the world we live in, the micromanaging of everyone and a complete propaganda that penetrates every sector of civilization. And I mean that for real. Like if you lived in India and you were watching Hollywood, or what do they call it, Dollywood?
Bollywood, man.
Yeah,
Bollywood.
I'm sorry. But yeah, they have their own genre of movies and culture and styles and what's cool. But guess what they still get there? They still get the same exact propaganda that you get anywhere in the United States. It's just mind-boggling. And then when you sit back and think, oh, China's supposed to be our enemy and they're reverse and they're communists and we don't like that, or we're pretending we don't like that. And then you look at all the things going on in their civilization, and then you look back over here at our civilization, and you'll realize if you went down a checklist, you could check them all. We're exactly the same as them. We just have a little bit of freedom left that's being squeezed out here in the next, I'm going to say, before 2024. That's my timeline, because look what they're doing with all of the topics. They're planning on mass rioting right now over this idea of whether or not to kill your offspring being a right or not a right. Regardless of how you feel about that, think about the idea of how they pumped up the public so much that you can guarantee that we're going to be burning down stuff, but we won't call that an insurrection. We're just going to call patriotic people that love their country and don't want to be, included in some of these weird programs as, insurgents. Think about that really hard. Why are they so insistent on calling something that was obviously a mild protest got out of hand, calling it an insurgency or an insurrection? It's because they want to call the public insurgents. And you know where that comes from. That's the vocabulary that has been given to people that join the military when they go overseas, and there's any kind of fight back from the people that actually live in the country. We call that an insurgency. Now, if you remember back to 2001, they really pushed that idea of domestic terrorism and domestic terror, and that's all they shoved down our throat. At the same time as telling us 19 Saudis with box cutters, somehow came from Afghanistan and Iran, and they took down those planes and crashed into that building. So we had to worry about domestic terrorism, if that makes sense to you. And the new popular thing is drugs, from pharmaceutical down. They're trying to warp you out at every level. And I think And even though I'm a marijuana activist and I don't believe the government should be able to tell you, I think that there's a hidden agenda with the legalization of marijuana to make the public even more lethargic than they were. And the reason I'm saying this is because I'm in that world. I know about it. And there's two types of marijuana plant. There is sativa and there is indica. And indica, as people know, is sleepy time. It keeps you in the couch. Maybe you might watch some TV, relax, whatever. But when you go to the dispensaries and you look at the companies that are growing it, they are moving completely over to indica and indica hybrids. And what they're doing is they're taking that part out of the sativa that makes people excited, allows them to work. It's the part that takes out a lot of bone and muscle aches and things like that. So the whole agenda is to not make people more productive, but to get every last dime that they have, because they know poor people can't grow it in the way that the companies can. So it's just like alcohol, where they just took it over. It's like tobacco. They just took it over and they twisted it into a negative for the public. And they're doing that, in my opinion, to go along with the propaganda that they're brainwashing everybody into these weird ideas. It's a complete warped civilization. It's time for empire collapse. And even people that are trying to fight from making the empire collapse might, secretly think maybe it is time that it just all collapses and, the cycle resets. And I don't know if that's a positive or a negative thing when someone on the bottom end agrees with people at the very top end that there needs to be a reset. It's just we're not agreeing on what kind of reset we need.
Yeah, that's the scary part. It's open for somebody else's interpretation to then turn into the narrative, and then the agencies that are bought and paid for to push that across their minions channels of schools and wherever else it could be, placed in front of your face. Like those decisions, the way that the reset's going to go, it's going to fractal or fracture into several different units for a while. But then again, at the end of it, control is going to want to be retained. So let's say we go to 2030, 2032, 2035. Everybody out in the countryside's already gotten completely new ways of lifestyle set up. Like if it starts to break down in 2023, by 2035, 10, 12 years, the countryside's going to be a fully functional, autonomous, we don't even need you place. But then the government's like, it's like back in the 1900s. Actually, I'll tell you a slide. I've been working on this video, which I'm going to release just after we're done here tonight. It was titled 125 years ago. You didn't have to ask permission from the government to. Now, this is what I'm saying. We're going to go back to this for a while here. Everybody's going to collect their own rainwater. Everybody's going to go fishing. And see, that's the thing. I wanted to talk to a couple hunting and fishing guides, if anybody out there listening. How long is it going to take for all the fish to be depleted after people start to go fishing to supplement when it gets too expensive so they can't buy? Like how long before the waters will be completely freaking fished out and people will be fishing with like pantyhose that thin of a net to get every last minnow or snail or whatever. They all need that much food and protein and it's not around. Like how long before everything's fished out? So you need to go fishing, but then also owning a property and starting a business and knowing how to build a home, knowing how to hunt, how to clean your game, how to cut your own hair, and how to sell food. Like these things, and also conduct a protest. You didn't need a permit back then. 125 years ago, you didn't have to ask permission from the government too. But I'm saying with the supply chain breakdown happening and centralized systems are absolutely going to go to almost zero. You can see it in writing. It is so clear as day now. There's no even thinking about. I wish the timeline would change. I really hope it like does a hard turn right or a dog leg left, because if we continue on this trajectory here, the society is going to fractal. Like the cities are going to get under control, like Ransom you've been talking about. But the countryside is going to break away into its own thing, totally autonomous. Doesn't rely on systems. But see, that's where we'll be back right with this 125 years ago thing. I don't know how quickly they'll try to rein everybody back in under the control, but you can see how long it took, 125 years for us to get back into the same system now, where you do need to pay to collect rainwater. It's illegal somewhere. You cannot go fishing without a license or on private property. You can't start a business without a license. You can't build a home or even make a change to your home without a business, and da-da-da-da-da. You can't even sell food without a license. So I'm wondering if we wind the clock back, like Grand Solar Minimum reset somewhere along the 1600s era, was that also Tartaria and what we consider those who split off? And the same thing, it would have to be in the 1880s where people had split off, or even earlier. Maybe it was 1816. Maybe Tambora really wiped out crop production enough where there was a society where not being told of functionally what they were using with vortices to generate power, like vortex power, versus burning something. You let water spin everything for you because it's heavier and denser. But pressurized steam at certain densities also will equal that. But there's so much involved in getting steam up to the pressure that water would push at for free. Victor Schauberger is somebody you want to check out with vortex power and gravitational vortex power. Now, perhaps these systems were back, let's say, in the mid-1800s, early 1800s. Railroads weren't too far after that in the 1850s, so you can think that there must have been some progress to understand some technologies from that point. Like, going from riding a horse to a locomotive, that's a huge jump in like 20 years. And then we're going to lay tracks everywhere, and these supergiant locomotives come out of where? Some shipbuilding things in the 1700s. They moved from completely wood ships into iron hulls powered by steam in less than 50 years. Like, this kind of evolutionary jump is a little big. So we had wooden ships for the last 5,000, 7,000 years, and then suddenly just bam, in 50 years or less, we went right to steamships. And it was the same thing. Everybody's cruising along on horses, horse and carriage, buggy, horse and carriage, and wham, coming out with supergiant locomotives. I don't know. There's a piece missing somewhere. But perhaps we're going through this reset several times, and we're just here naturally on it again. And this fractal of our society, as we bend off, is going to become that, what you could do years ago. But this time it's just going to be the question of it. So, Ransom, I'll ask you, how quickly, if this new society forms off centralized systems and the whole social credit score evolves over in the cities, and these two are marching parallel into the full-on crash, into the full-on collapse, into the depths of it, and the rebuilding coming out, 10, 12, 15 years from now, they're still running parallel. One didn't try to overtake the other. How long do you think it's going to play out before that one system that's centralized is going to be like, get your asses back here, you're paying taxes, you're going to pay for the rainwater, you've been off this, you got to pay for the food, you need to pay sales tax when you sell it. How long do you think that'll be before they get roped back in? Or I'll be part of this crew out in the countryside rolling forward, so that's why I'm asking the question.
I actually don't think it'll take much time at all. I think what they plan on doing is crashing everything and then using the digital identification, credit score, medical history, criminal record, etc. Basically, they've been pushing for, the national ID, world ID, passes, and it just keeps going and progressing until you see what they want, and they already have these systems set up. So what's going to happen is, in my opinion, is they're going to crash everything, the economies, all of it, and the way to all of a sudden claim your identity and your property and your money and your crypto and everything is to join their system, or you don't get to play in any of it. And I think people that try to stay out of that have the paper proof of property, the deeds, the titles, are going to find themselves where they don't actually own anything. And there's already been examples of this during, like, you remember with the housing crisis that they were having, where banks were actually foreclosing on homes that they didn't even own and that they didn't have the paperwork. And when people had the deeds, they would show up to court and the judge would side with the bank every time. And I don't see that being that far-fetched from happening again. But to throw you back out there in the weird world, I think
boomerang me back there, man. I need to get to the weird, because The common right now or the normal now is too strange. I want the weird.
I think I figured out why and how they're setting up this technocratic system and how they're going to get it through the collapse of the magnetic field and this phase we're going through.
Love to hear that.
How do you protect your electrical device from an EMP or a solar flare or anything? You put it into a Faraday cage, or you hide it underwater. Now, if there was an implant made out of non-reactive materials, say plastic, graphene, something like that, and those things were programmed to make things in the human body, i.e. a brain implant or something like that, the best way to protect that would be to put it inside of some kind of Faraday cage or covered in water to protect it from cosmic rays, radiation, magnetic waves, etc. Now, is not the human being exactly one of those devices? So if you had a phone or a tablet or a TV or a computer or any of that stuff, and a big EMP happened, it would fry all of that stuff. That stuff would be useless. However, if you had a chip buried in your skull, or it grew there via new technologies that I was talking about, they have programmable nanotubulars that can go build things. And all they need is source material at the location that they're going to be. So I'm talking, things that are found in the body and things that they need to make high-tech, chips and stuff. You need plastics, gold, etc., different things. Or you could, supplement some of them for other things as long as they still work. But we're in that time right now where they're introducing all of that stuff into the human body, where it is possible to grow something inside of the body or just implant it the old-fashioned way, and that device would be protected. Now, if you had a centralized control system somewhere in the earth, say, that was also protected, all of the old technology would be destroyed, all of the devices, smartphones, etc., but you'd still be connected via the implant inside of your body that would be protected. I recently had an interview with Dubyne where he was talking about, their cyborg implants would probably blow up in their head, but I actually don't think so, because we can now make organic chips, programmable DNA, and all of these other things that can counteract some of those flaws from older technologies. So it's very possible that the brain chip agenda is the way that they're going to pass their control over to the next era, and the other people be just lost if they don't have books, if they didn't take the chip, if they didn't stay in at night or whatever it was when it happened. They would be totally back in the Stone Age versus people that are still connected to a centralized AI. Who would control such a centralized propaganda information platform? Well, they already have these that were built by the military-industrial complex, and it's called Google. And who is claiming that they have not only quantum supremacy, but also claiming they have AI that is now conscious and also is in the business of implants, and both sides of the political spectrum is also trying to go down the same path. So you got Klaus Schwab, you got Elon Musk, and all of probably millions of companies that make things or are doing science in this field that you don't even know about. And then you add in some of the recent events that have been happening with the medical industry, let's just put it that way. If you really look into that, all of these, components and resources necessary are already being allocated to the population. Let's just say it that way. Internally allocated to the population. Those that don't die, and I wanted to get into another subject and let you talk about that. But
wait, before you jump on there, that magnetic field thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Faraday cage are deep enough under the earth, and then also insulated as a ground, even in the earth, because the earth can carry current itself through the minerals in the crust. They're called veins. And then also, some of these veins are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles long and wide and different depths. So imagine like the copper veins. The reason that was the 1989 solar flare and then also the Carrington event were centered over what we consider like the northeast part of North America here, northeast U.S., Canada. is because there's huge amounts of minerals there. That's why there's all the bauxite and different aluminum mining, copper mining, iron ore mining. That whole area of the entire planet is just one solid metal mass in the crust. So any kind of electrical field line is going to come down on there because it's like having the largest wire on the planet that it can connect to. It's going to go straight in there. So with that being said, how deep would you need to be underground to withstand cosmic rays? Because, again, going to these underground cities, they were obviously able to withstand the cosmic rays, even at 100 foot deep, 200, 400 feet deep. And then these caves around the planet, they go miles into the earth. But the human species has been well known to morph and mesh and bend with cosmic ray events on evolutionary leaps as well. So with that tech in the body, so let's think about it. Let's go back because we love talking about Denisovans and Neanderthals. So let's say Denisovan had been rewired with the same exact thing, and Neanderthal as well with the same exact thing in different epochs of history. But these evolutionary leaps that are popping in with cosmic rays that cause like the next generation to be born as different species or have a different trait in a species. I'm talking 40,000, 80, 100,000 years ago coming back in, like how much would this tech really be affected by a species jump through cosmic rays itself, causing the physical form to shift because of radiation? You always talk about like 3-legged frogs or like 6-legged sheeps or something popping out from a radiological disaster in an area. There'll be a 2-headed something that pops out, right? Those are the kind of gene traits I'm talking about. Radiation tweaks the species itself. So I'm just wondering if the species gets tweaked in a certain way, the Homo sapiens sapien, with massive cosmic ray bombardment as Earth's magnetic field depletes and goes to zero in some places with rips in it that allows UVB radiation to actually hit the planet's surface and fry that area. Much like the cattle. That was one good explanation for the cattle being those 10,000 cattle and like the 3,000 sheep is just a new one in the last day or so. That rip in what we consider our magnetosphere that protects us, there's rips in it, and that is actually coming down, UVB hitting the ground, but it seems to be isolated where animals are. So the story goes. So Ransom, I would pose the question then, if Homo sapiens sapien is going to change because we're coming into a very depleted magnetic field on our planet, which means an enormous amount of cosmic rays. I mean, really like species-changing types of densities of cosmic rays coming in. At that point, what's been jabbed into us now? Is it for us now, or is it for us as we get into this cosmic ray density and change? Which would mean that the elites would know exactly when the cosmic ray density would increase on this cycle, have it mapped out to start to take effect at a certain year and month. Like, who has that kind of information? You're going back millions of years to understand that. So whoever's hiding underground after every one of these cosmic events pops back out with their intact tech and just keeps it going forward. Wouldn't surprise me if somewhere they're 3,000 years ahead in the technology, if that were to be the case, just 5,000 years ahead, just based on our recorded history, going back to like the Hittites 5,000 years prior. Something like that. So really, what is this tech is it evolving, or is that why there's so many people dying now? Because they can't hold on to the frequency, or it's not ready yet until the cosmic rays come in and then the human jumps into that field where that programmable nanotech you're talking about is inside, and then boom, it just syncs up with the human. But right now, we're not in a syncing pattern, but just getting there, just going to be there in a few months, just as the next magnetic field planet aligns. And then bam, it all comes together. And maybe that's too far-fetched, but I'm seeing something, these different sciences blending into one another. And maybe this tech only works in a depleted magnetic field. Maybe it'll actually itself turn on when the magnetic field weakens further. You don't know the parameters of this programmable nanotech. I mean, is it also communicating with 5G? And that's the reason they put it up around everywhere. is because that nanotech needs to communicate in real time on a vast area with the host. But then, what's going on with magnetic field in there? Because it's got to be mapped out already where the magnetic field is going to go in which years and which months, how much radiation that's going to send in inbound, which years, which months. And then there would be the inverse that they've done thousands and thousands of papers on of, how many volcanic eruptions and volcanoes would occur in a depleted or very low magnetic field. And how will it truly go? If you had millions and millions and millions of years of records, you would know for sure down to the nth degree, really, what kind of intensity it was, when the onset was, and how long it would last, and all these different things. Because there's a good amount of information about this grand solar minimum heading into it right now. And that's just on the last, what we know is written record of 400 plus years, 800, some scatterings across different cultures. Nothing was solid to go, and you got to piece it all together. An empire collapse over there, a mega drought over there, something that wiped out and a mountain shifted there and rediverted. So many stories in history of empires risen and fallen. But what if I had millions of years of that data to work on? And that tech at that time would keep it as detailed as it is now, so you could have 2 million years of detailed record of grand solar minimums preceded by solar cycles, crop temperatures. You'd map the entire planet. You know exactly where the steepest declines in temperature and rainfall pattern would be. They're symbiotic. When temperature changes lower, generally you get cooler and wetter. Imagine having, even if you had 500,000 years of detailed cycle every 400 years. You'd know right now, you'd be riding on top of this cycle, resetting everything. So, the tech, the age of the invaders of the planet, there's a lot of questions here that need to be answered, but we just never seem to get closer, do we?
I think we are. I mean, it seems like every day there's not only all of these changes in the world, but or at least it's true for me. I keep having these weird epiphanies, whether they're true or not, or whether they turn out to be right or not is something else. But the reason that I brought up the implant and the technology is because there's, in my opinion, several programs going on to reform the earth that people just really aren't paying attention to. And
that's another, if I may inject, Ransom, that is another thing, terraforming, like truly terraforming. Okay, thanks. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, that's kind of exactly what I'm talking about. It's the real geoengineering, if you want to put it that way. And I'll show you an example. I don't believe it's on accident. So we're, talking about these implants, and I kind of have this theory that you could put it inside someone. You could put it inside an animal. They've already proven that. They put it in monkeys, pigs, etc., and had a real connection. So you got that, but also they're editing DNA on a scale that's unimaginable. And I call it genetic pollution. Whether it turns out to be good or not, that's something we probably won't even see in our lifetimes, but we might. And the reason I say that is because we know in the past speciation and extinction happens pretty fast. And here's an idea that I've been thinking about. So I read this story that just pops up on Microsoft, the little stories there that get you sidetracked with the clickbait, and it's talking about a Siberian tiger that gives birth to a rare litter at Six Flags Great Adventure. And so for some reason, my mind just goes in this idea of thinking about, they're talking about there's only 500 in the wild. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the past, when things go extinct or speciations happen, it's usually or generally because one species adapts to a certain thing and lives, and the others of its same species die out. And we think that's the case, and that's kind of more the truth of evolution than it's more than natural selection or survival of the fittest. Certain things that are out of the genetic sphere happen that make animals go in one direction or another. One example of that is the house cat. And we know that their brains are shrinking over time. And it's because of not hunting and different things like that. They just sit around. The same thing is happening for the big cats, but the even stranger idea, or cooler idea, I think, is what's happening to the small amount of still wild animals out there in the wild. Well, what's happening is the ones that are still alive are the best ones at evasion. They're the smartest. They're the best predator. Those are the ones that are breeding in the wild population. So the big predators that are out there are evolving in a way where they're going to become better predators. And we have programs protecting them, and they're giving us ideas like, oh, the ice caps are melting and the poor polar bears, even though their numbers are at record levels, and they are an adaptive animal that lives both in the ocean and on land. So they're going to find food one way or the other. So you start thinking about this speciation that's happening right before our eyes. And then also think about all the programs that they're running that I've talked about before. There's a program in North America to bring back Ice Age animals, populations of that. In Europe, they're doing the same thing. We're not only trying to bring back animals that exist in low numbers and make them big, but we're also trying to bring back, for some reason, Ice Age animals, but with a little twist, because now we're tinkering with their DNA. So it's not going to be the original animal. It's going to be a new created animal. And once you see that, you realize they're doing that to the human. They're doing that to the entire planet. So I think that they have control over something they just don't have control over. I think that this might have actually happened before. Somebody tried to design a world with designer animals. And just like every other civilization, there's collapsed. They always do. I mean, it's just part of empire. As an empire collapses, and hopefully what comes out of it next is something better. But this time is a little bit different than all of the other times, possibly. And that's because we have a technological finger in every aspect of this transition. And while we're all in la la land, they're doing some serious scientific experiments on a world stage. And it's no accident that people like Bill Gates, people that are controlling not only the medical industry, the computer industry, and now they're getting into farming, which are all three arenas that they believe they can program. This is what they are. They are programmers. They not only make program for television, but they make program for the environment. And it's no accident that they're saving back these arcs of original strands of DNA. And I don't think they're doing it because they think that the world's going to end and they're going to come out and start farming this stuff. I think they're doing it so that they have a go back or a protection against losing the original strands of DNA for future programs that they're going to be doing. So they're just going to be growing these original, free, probably if you want to look at it that way, made by nature or God, intended for animals and their journey, including us. And they're trying to subvert all of that, like they've subverted government, religion, and then you got to circle back to the man on the streets. If people don't even know what happened in the five years prior, what's going on right now, how are they supposed to comprehend these massive programs that are backed by quantum computing and some of the world's top psychologically, I'm going to say psychopaths and sociopaths that are actually really, really smart people? There's no argument that the people, all these scientists that are pushing global warming and medical stuff, they are all PhDs. They are all very, not only highly educated, but they have high IQs. And it makes you wonder, why is it that at the simultaneous time they're so smart, are they so dumb? It's because they're being interfered with programs that's taking up and shaping that. Most of those people, I think, if they could break away from the program, all of these epiphanies would start happening daily, kind of like what I started saying. And my epiphany is there's speciation happening right now, and someone's planning it. So all these critters that they're talking about that are going extinct, that they're protecting, they may go extinct, but then again, they may evolve into something we're not prepared for.
We'll be back in 2 minutes and 2 seconds. David Dubyne, your host, right along with Ransom Godwin.
Are we at the cusp of AI? How do we beat the cosmic ray upgrade?
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And we'll be right back after this message.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Are you interested in the paranormal? Murder mystery? Real natural law? You enjoy interviews with amazing guests? Then join Crypt Rick every Monday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Revolution Radio. Studio A, freedomslips.com. Crypt Rick's Thinker. Welcome to the Crypt.
Join me at Revolution Radio, Studio B, at 11 a.m. on Saturday for Free Association, when we take a look at philosophy, spirituality, psychology, social issues, and geopolitics. It's every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern on Studio B at freedomslips.com.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
Galactic Interstellar Council on Revolution Radio Studio A, Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Join us as we traverse the starseed paradigm, as expressed in the time-space continuum that we know as the divine expression of love and light. Integrating this conscious unity into the galactic paradigm. So welcome all, both terrestrial beings and galactic beings as one. So be it. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of whose program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at buyer risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps. Thanks for listening while we take that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And yeah, we're going to get back to your host.
And welcome back for the second hour of Mini Ice Age Conversations. David Dubyne here, along with Ransom Godwin, Revolution Radio, Studio A. Thanks for letting us chat. If anybody supports free speech, now more than ever, consider a donation, because you see the world's constricting. And once we hit on these topics of truth, seems to be a little bit of censorship occur at that time. But we're talking about cosmic rays and artificial intelligence, nanotech, autonomous nano building materials, robotics, and a fleet of 400 little tiny spots, about the quarter of the size of a regular yellow spot robot. But if we were looking for signs that we are coming into the end of what we know as the present Homo sapien sapien, if our DNA was going to get shifted by cosmic rays coming in, there should be some precursors in our Earth's crust that would show us that, well, we're going to start wobbling way before we get any effects on our physical bodies from the cosmic rays. Like our Earth is going to really forewarn us, you all need to get underground now, man. This is serious. I'm going to shake and rattle and roll until you get the message. So here we are. Here's a good one to start tonight. Second hour of Mini Ice Age Conversations. I appreciate, and Ransom, both of us appreciate all of you spending your valuable time. And we're also streaming this evening. You're able to find us over on Rumble. Thank you for joining. Leave a comment there as well. Trying to expand onto the streaming services as we do this to broadcast the message to a wider audience and more ears, and sense to know when we're talking BS or not. And that should be the thing. Everybody should be allowed to have their own opinion. If it's BS, everybody can sniff it out. Oh, no, we got to censor what you say. No, don't do that. I'm talking about cosmic ray increases that are going to show planetary effects. And here we go. I can't believe Japan just put into play its comprehensive preparations for the eruption of Mount Fuji. Last time, 1707, VEI 5. It would paralyze Tokyo in less than a day. Everything would come to a standstill, and they wouldn't be able to reopen for approximately 3 months, and even the ash on the rail tracks wouldn't allow anybody to escape, and they were looking at a loss of some 25 million people if that were to happen, because they actually couldn't evacuate Tokyo and Chiba. There's no way to do it by any modern means. People have to walk out of there. And like 6-inch deep ash. Can you imagine? Like even the first step is going to contaminate your air, let alone thousands, millions of people moving around. Come on. None of the trucks or anything will work. They'll be also choked with ash like you've seen Guatemala or anywhere else after a major eruption. But what is the deal with this? They're already planning for it. And I say, what else is being planned for? Oh, the Bank of England. You know, these nefarious characters here are putting into play their bank bail-in protocol. Yeah, that was passed after 2008, that the bail-ins would be the bailout for the bank. You see, 2008, the law was changed after this subprime financial crisis. And we're repeating a lot of chapters here. Like this subprime financial crisis, everybody got in on early mortgages and hardly had to put like $1 down, but your mortgage would go up and down with the interest rate of the gov. But it was so stable for a while that people were like, okay, it'll stay at like 3%, 4%. It won't move up from there. But it did greatly in 2007. In 2008, it got so unaffordable because people's mortgages rose so quickly that they just dropped the keys on the table and walked away en masse. And it took bank after bank after bank down. So then all these banks were getting nearly to the collapse of the financial system. They had to put in a bunch of paper fake money back at that time, too. And, you know, they were quibbling about like not even $1 trillion at that time to save the system. And the request was for 700 and something billion in a single night. And they were freaked out. It wasn't even $1 trillion they were asking for. And it was still like so orders of magnitude above anything ever asked for that it shocked everybody. But now 780 or something billion on a single transaction helps save the monetary system. You're like, oh, we can do that every night now. You know, and just the way they frame it now, it's trillions, 34 trillion. And, you know, those bank bail-ins, the same thing like these scoundrels did that are in the Federal Reserve, the Board of Governors in the Federal Reserve. They passed a law at the very top of the market that they were no longer allowed to own any equities or bonds or anything in the financial markets, and they forced themselves to sell. Just before the very top of the market, they passed that. 2 months later was the very top of the market as we know it today, and they all had to sell forced at the point of a, you know, mandate or something, or they're going to lose their position. You need to sell everything. They sold themselves at the high of the market. These are the people you're dealing with that also passed those same bailout bills back in 2008 and 2009. Financial crisis was going to collapse. Seriously, was going to collapse, or so they say. They needed the almost $1 trillion. Because of that, so many banks failed. Freddie Mae, Fannie Mac, anything real estate. Well, this time it's going to be anything commodities. I am making a bold call here, and please, Ransom, write this down or else I'm going to forget it in my state of mind right now. Please, if you could make me a note, I'm begging. The next, just like it was the you know, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac that got taken down on the real estate collapse in 2008. The commodities houses and the commodities brokers and the trading houses are going to get taken out this time because there's not going to be enough corn to deliver on contract. There's more people with contracts now pledging to take delivery out of Chicago in September, which is just literally a few months away, than there is the amount of corn in the United States to fill the contracts. At this time, we're months away from anywhere. And now they're basing it on what they're getting for crop forecast now. But now it's getting worse and worse and worse. There's droughts and like lowering yields everywhere across the board. Like everything that was planned at the beginning of the year for yields is down at least 20%. And then you got the fertilizer shortages too on top of that. I'm just talking about natural effects. So when you're looking at the cascade of the way the cascade of the demolishing of the financial system is going to be based on the product base itself. Because if you don't have the corn, you can't manufacture almost any product that we have, from the fuels that need the ethanol to most of the things in the supermarkets that need some sort of corn product in them. And then we got the animal feed, and corn is in every finger. Like you said, it's technologically right now in this transition, there's a finger in every bit of technology that there could possibly be applied to society right now. Well, same thing with corn. It's in everywhere. It's really a place you cannot find a corn byproduct. The same thing with diesel and different, you know, emulsifiers and these different things that go into diesel fuels. They got 5-6 extra chemicals that need to go in there, along with the DEF, that's that diesel exhaust that's mandated by the EPA to reduce pollution. Like that's an extra thing that's just not there. So I'm calling it this time, commodities are going to crash the entire planetary monetary system. September it begins, December it ends. It's really going to happen that fast because the first deliveries come up in September. The amount of paper contracts out there is limitless pretty much. But people have realized that, you know what, like me, there won't be the corn. So what if I get the corn? I could probably get it in my physical hand and then on-sell it to somebody for a 20 or 30% gain easily, just even in a day or two of transaction. Go, oh, I got 50 barges of corn. Who wants it? Nobody else can get it. And you charge extra. So a lot of people are onto this, and they understand it. And with China bidding in higher than the world price right now, that if you're able to even get that corn, anywhere in the world will pay you unbelievable amounts for that because there's food shortages happening now. What's that? Ecuador's the next place already fell. You know, everywhere you look, Egypt, Middle East, smaller nations, Sri Lanka, they're going to fall first. They're going to pay anything for that corn if you can get it. So the bidding war is going to go on here. And I was talking to a guy up at the CME, or I should say the Chicago Board of Trade. got a gem seat up there. Every day that they can't close the contract, and this is a clearinghouse, that's usually an arm of a bank. Every day they cannot close the contract, they are fined. So the way that it's being worked out at the banks as we currently sit here right now is, how much are they going to need to pay to close that contract? And they're working with these cost analyses. So let's say they have, I'm going to use simple math here, a contract to deliver 1,000 tons, but they only can get from their grower, who is also on contract, 800 tons. If that farm can't deliver its contract, it gets fined every day also, the farm itself. So they're looking for a massive amount of bankruptcies to roll through the farming industry, because these guys are getting wiped out on their yields, not only for the fertilizer, but also the drought that we're seeing and the inclement weather for planting all over the northern tier states of the U.S. on the border with Canada, specifically the Dakotas. It's physically not going to be there. So whoever has the most money to buy it to cover and then get the extra to close their contract. So you're looking on the market for 200 extra tons, because your contract's for 1,000. You got to deliver, getting fined every day. I can deliver 800 tons of it. Okay, so I'm out on the market trying to scrap together 200 tons. And this is where lies in the problem, is the banks are going to bid to any price it takes to get that corn. Now, soybeans, as I was talking with my contact there, was saying, David, you're not going to believe this. They're talking like $50 soybean. What do you? That's never been that. It's not even conceivable to go that high, ever. Even where we're at the record high ranges now, to say 50, you'd be laughed out of a room. I was nearly laughed out of a room for calling $20 wheat last year. Came up to $14, and I got a couple phone calls. Like, how did you know it was going to go up so this year? That's crazy. Maybe it's not a record yet, but when it comes into harvest season, it's sure going to be a record. It's going to be $20 wheat for sure coming into the harvest season. And the banks are going to need to cover that too, because of their clearing houses that have open contracts for wheat and corn. And what else do they have out there? The soybean. The millet. There's some small sorghum markets. There's a few oat markets that are out. But every day they can't close the contract, they're getting fined. So they're going to collude together to buy every single square inch of property across this planet's corn and get it in so they can close the contract. And it's like they're just going to bid it as high as it can possibly go past the moon, or stratospheric way. Forget that. You're going to the moon and back, because they just don't care. Because the losses are going to exceed, and they're going to crash the balance sheet and crash the parent bank off of this. Because they don't own just one contract. They own thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of contracts through these banks for delivering everything out on, I don't know. It's starting to show the illusion of the crack, because the silver market's the exact same way. There's like 1,000, maybe even more paper ounces out there than the physical. Well, that's the same thing. Let's say you have 1,000. Now, 100 of those are coming and saying, well, I want my physical. Before, it was only like 1 or 2. It's the highest recorded ever amount of people wanting physical delivery. So the way this is going to rock the market, and the way your food prices are going to rise so fast, you're just not going to know what happened. Because when the banks start bidding it up, and I'm going to use the example, you're going from like $18 soybean to $50 soybean. That's more than doubling. It's almost tripling. What do you think is going to happen to the animal feed prices, and like the cooking oil prices, and anything that use soy or soy product in a product, byproduct? How many things have soy meal in it, or soy flour, soy milk, soy everything? Your price in the store is not going to go up 3x. It's going to go up about maybe 6 or 7x. So whatever the farmers are reflecting on that, you can then double that out to your store purchase price, and probably higher. Because out here in East Tennessee, a dozen eggs at wholesale is like $1.50 now. It did creep up to around $1.70. But you think about what you're paying for a dozen eggs out in the store now, you're easily at $4. And the beef right now about $1.60 live weight per pound. Then you look in the store and you go, no way. You're not anywhere close to $1.60 on a piece of meat anywhere. In lamb, it's at $2.30 a pound. Last year it was $2 a pound live weight. But I can't tell you anywhere in the world where you can get a lamb cut for like $2. You got to buy a live weight animal. You got to do the process. You got to figure it out. You need to get, dress that thing out into steaks and meats that you can use. Because I don't know, Ransom, I lost my thought there. But something nefarious this way comes.
You made me hungry talking about all those steaks and stuff. First, all of what you said is obviously happening, and people sometimes don't understand the how things are relevant. Like you were talking about, when all of these grains go up in price, that you're going to have all of these other products, everything breaded, all the animal feed, everything that takes these grains to oils. But not just that. Think about they're hiking the price of petroleum products up. What does that mean to you? Well, most people think about the gas pump being high, and they're paying a lot for gas, but everything made out of petroleum increases. And for an example, I used to do vinyl siding right around the time that we were doing a lot of war, and I saw when the price of gas went up, guess what also went up? All of our building supplies that we normally made our percentage off of the low cost of the materials and getting paid a pretty good amount for labor, that all disappeared. So our profit disappeared almost overnight with the increase of gasoline or petroleum products, because everything made out of petroleum products, that includes all your plastics, everything that's made out of plastic, that pretty much is 90% of the product, stuff that you're going to be getting from the store, any kind of trinkets, any kind of tools, any kind of clothing, etc. There's so much plastic tied to that. And also the food industry. Just imagine how much plastics that they put on everything, and all of that is also going to increasing the overall price of each one of those products. Food products especially is where you're going to start seeing it. I saw tinfoil, like $15 for one little thing, and I was thinking, wow, man, I'm glad I don't even use that.
But a roll of a roll of aluminum paper you're talking, or aluminum sheet.
Yeah, it's like almost pushing a
$20
bill.
Yeah, right, same thing.
And then it makes me think of, part of what you were talking about is what you were saying to write down there about the 2008 Fannie and Freddie Mac.
See, I already forgot. Thank you for writing that down. After I explained it, I knew I was going to forget it. Thank you.
Well, I was thinking of cycles when you saying that, and so right now we have a unique planetary alignment that's happening, and let's push ourselves over into the astrology cycle for just a second. I'm not an astrologer. However, I did recognize that astrology is one of the first sciences, and there's a lot of patterns and things that you could tell about reality. But not only that, more importantly, we know that the elite and a lot of the people in these secret schools and societies and different things all are super about the astrology when things line up. And right now, and this month, we have Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn all lining up early in the morning. So one thing I'm saying is, imagine how the ancient people felt when they looked up and saw all of their visible gods in the sky at one time. But let's fast forward to a more recent cycle. So the last time that these 5 planets simultaneously, were in the sky was in 1864. What was happening in 1864, and what kind of cycle?
Yeah, the beginning of the Civil War.
That's right. The whole year was Civil War. War. Now, right now, if you've been paying attention to the fictional stories that they're saying, they're trying to tell us right now that's what's going on. That we're, at the fringe of a civil war. They've been trying really hard to push it. Why, though? Well, I think this is part of the answer right here. It's historical events. And it just shows you what was happening in 1864, last time the planets aligned like this. And what happened was a bunch of war. the exchange of monies and goods and resources, and the realigning of partnerships, business deals, stock markets, what they had then. And you could just look through the entire year. This is war. And this is what they tried to have planned for us now, which is funny because this same cycle is going to pop back around in 20 years. So this was a longer cycle, but the same planetary cycle is going to pop back up in 20 years in 2040. And what do you think we're going to look like by 2040? And it just kind of, puts in perspective that these elites pay attention to the alignments. And we were talking about, the Bethlehem star a few years ago, very significant. Blood moons in the last couple years for several religions is very significant. There's been all kinds of these astronomical alignments that haven't happened in exactly the same procession, I guess, or in a row in the same order as they are happening in the last several years. And then I have to point out that we are waiting for this solstice and alignment in 2024, where these giants are going to be creating a geometric pattern along with the solar system. So God knows what that means exactly for the planet Earth. But think about the esoteric side of it and the elite's beliefs and what happens at these times. And you can see that these people are just rolling down a plan that was given to them by somebody at some time, I think a long time ago. And, I'm starting really to theorize that whatever technological civilization we had before was at least to the level, not like a extraterrestrial that we think about that, needs all this energy to travel the universe to get from one place to another, but they came from local and might even have been, some kind of other hominid, maybe not even an alien at all. But either way, when they talk about what they were doing, genetics, rocket-fueled technology, they talk about that. So all of these are examples of our civilization right now. So they weren't that very far advanced. So they should have been at the point where they had created some kind of AI. And then civilization, as we knew it, collapsed there, or as they knew it, excuse me, and it took us thousands of years to recuperate. However, if you just had one piece of technology from that era of some kind of artificial intelligence, all you would be waiting for is for civilization to get back in the space it needs to build technological things. So it's true whether or not it was an ancient hominid that could have possibly done this. And think about it, they could have literally just used an old AI from something else. And that's where these plans come from. They didn't know how to, technologically send it to the future. So what they did is they opened up secret schools of learning, secret libraries and things like that. And that's the only way that I can see possible that people like the Mayan, the Olmec, and various other cultures around the world had a 52,000 year history of celestial events. And which brings me back to this point. We're now in a pretty impressive event. If you get up early in the morning and look to, I believe it's the east, you'll see the moon and all of these planets all in a line.
Yeah, Ransom, that's tonight. After our show, 4 hours after our show, look east at that time and you'll see what you're talking about here.
Absolutely. And then, like I said, what was happening the last go round when all of these people were in power, these families, these elites, these, entities like banking institutions that are ran by all of these secret societies, elites, and the occult, they love that stuff. So what was happening last time? Civil war. What are they trying to give us now? Civil war, world war. It's like all of these cycles are all coming into alignment. If you can just picture a bunch, hundreds of different circles on their own path, their own cycle, kind of picture the Mayan or Olmec calendar and how it's a bunch of gears within gears within gears, and it turns, and there's all of these, interconnected little cycles along with big cycles. And then, weirdly, I don't know why, it just always made me think of this. Think about the book of Ezekiel in the Bible and how they describe the UFO or God or whatever you want to call it. It was gears and wheels with faces. And, it was all of the signs of the time now, which is chimeras, technology, artificial intelligence. The idea is getting closer and closer. And by the way, on July 5th, the Large CERN Hadron Collider is going to collide particles at a speed they never have done before in an attempt to find particles from another dimension. Okay,
That's
in layman's
June
terms, that's
5th.
what they're doing. That's
June
right.
5th.
Or July 5th. I thought it was July. So if it was June 5th, they already did it.
Yeah, no, that's going to be an interesting day, isn't it? And then look to see astrologically what's happening, because here I got another factoid from you. While you were talking, I looked up something here, because I remember hearing a glimmer of this in like a couple weeks ago, about 1,000 years ago. And okay. So the last time that the sort of similar alignment was 20 years ago. But here's the interesting thing. Like in the zodiac, you have the 12 quadrants of the sky. Now, this precision of the planets being spaced far enough out so the larger planets aren't overtaking the smaller ones, you can actually see a space between all of them, so you can see the line of them. In the same exact quadrant of the sky was 949 AD. So it's not the alignment itself. It transited through the different zodiac signs, and then it's back where it was exactly in the same quadrant of the sky, exactly as it was 1,000 years ago almost. So the next time it'll do it in this exact same spot that we're going to stand, like we're going to see it tonight later on. The way we see it in the quadrant of the sky it is, and how spaced perfectly they are, so you can see every one of those. The only time that exact parameter will ever come back again is the year 2492. I am saying something very similar is happening like October 23rd, 2024. The four gas giants are lining up into a square in the outer solar system. And if you do spin it around just right, it looks like the Kabbalah of the mysticism. Those four gas giants make the square. You come straight down, and Earth and Mars are aligned and into the sun. And then Mercury and Venus are behind that, pretty much in line. So if you're looking at things celestial, and I've heard this also, a glimmer of this before, that the elites are waiting for this specific alignment. They are waiting for an alignment. I'm saying that's the same alignment in October of 2024 that they are waiting for. But I'm curious what is happening esoterically tonight, because 1,000 year is a pretty long wait to have the same exact lineup of the planets in the sky. That's real interesting that it's a 1,000-year event, and then they're firing up the collider here on the 5th. And what's going on then should be a question, too. Full moon, new moon. I don't know. What kind of moon could it be?
I got a question for you, because, I'm now thinking about the whole, since I've been reading into the electric universe and talking to different people and kind of viewing the universe, it kind of confirmed my own, the way I viewed it already. But it just kind of connected it better. So I have this idea of this date is this, winter solstice 2024. The planets are aligned like this. What would happen if the sun produced a, coronal mass ejection, and it was pushed out towards Earth and then into these four gas giants that have these magnetic fields? What happens with all that energy? Does it bounce back to the Earth again for a second hit? And what would that look like as far as, the cosmic rays hitting the Earth from two different directions, kind of? It makes me think of these things. What kind of weird magnetic phenomenon is going to happen? And that was just a what if. But what if we had a coronal mass ejection? Think about the energy, or even without it, the sun's energy that it's already pushing off, bouncing back from those magnetic fields would be all Earth facing, directed back at us. So there would be an increase necessarily, I would think. I mean, I'm not an astrophysicist or nothing, but I would think that just picturing it in my head in layman's terms of this energy bouncing off of magnetic fields coming back, it would be coming back at the Earth at that time. So with or without, it seems like a very unusual, set of circumstances that might create a phenomenon. That's something that would go down in the ages. So that might be the reason.
I got you covered, man.
Yeah. And my brain thinks that way. I got the, the Olmec calendar gears just floating in there, showing all these little cycles, big cycles. Now they ended that at 2024. And the reason for that is unknown. but it is connected with a Mayan god of destruction and war. And that was a tablet that nobody actually saw till recently, because the priest that put it into the temple at the very top of the pyramid put it in backwards so no one would see it. And, so it's a really strange inscription. And knowing that they knew 52,000 years of history, at least celestial history, kind of makes you wonder, why did they stop it, for one? And two, what is the new cycle? That they were thinking of, and what are the signs? Like, basically, I named tonight's thing because of these planets. What are the signs of the times, and how do we read them? And I'm sure you got something to say about that.
Yeah, I'd like to see that Mayan image that you're talking about, because your answer is an actual physics answer. It's called the Bloch wall, or some people call it the Bloch wall. That's where two magnetic fields are looping in on themselves, and they reach that 0 point between, where there's no magnetism between either wall, because there's that little bit of repelling amongst each wall and that perfect center line. Like Bose noise-canceling headsets, but using magnetic fields to do the exact same thing. They cancel each other as they're looping on top of a toroid of each other. That meeting point where they interloop is where our Earth is going to pass through, interestingly. Because the four gas giants themselves are going to create their own slight new magnetic field. It's going to be a toroid magnetic field, interlooping with our suns, but the sun's going to continue to step down in its activity, at that point going into solar minimum and a grand solar minimum, and possible step down into multi-thousand-year cooling. At the same time, those four gas giants are going to have close enough proximity to be able to create their magnetic field balanced off of themselves. Hence that Bloch wall. But what will happen with the sun? Will it create some sort of extra ejecta, or maybe even a full line of plasma reaching the outer planets? That would be a rod from God. That would be planetary lightning. But see, I guess that's not the biggest thing to worry. It is a big thing to worry about, but as we swing around, and here's the scary thing, as we swing around in front of the sun in 2025, say March and April, there's nothing in front of us at all in the entire solar system. Everything's behind us. All the gas giants are pulling like an arrowhead. Those four gas giants are making that perfect square of magnetism, pulling everything right in on the tip. And the tip is the Earth coming back through that field. And the sun's going to be at lower activity, which means more debris can actually get through the bow shock, and then more debris can actually get into our atmosphere, because our magnetic field's weaker and more little grains of dust, and anything that should burn up in the upper atmosphere doesn't. And we're going to be in a planetary rock field moving through this as the Earth by itself, in front of the sun behind us. If I'm just standing facing open space in front of me, directly behind me is going to be the sun and Mars and Venus and Mercury. And then we get into the outer gas giants. They're all in a perfect square, sucking whatever that's going to come in magnetically out of that open solar system. Pure space in front of us. It's like riding the wave of on being on an open ocean sailboat and just sitting there and looking at nothing in front of you except open space out to the bow shock and further beyond. And everything's behind you, like aircraft carriers. And you're looking like, whoa, what kind of wake are they creating? You got four aircraft carriers making a square. What kind of wake are they going to make? And you're out there on the bow of the sailboat looking, you can see this massive amount of stuff behind you. Because if it was missiles coming in, they'd all be going over the bow of the boat trying to hit all those things behind. So there's going to be a huge planetary bombardment coming for at least 3 to 6 months. And once we swing back around the back of the sun, then things start to loosen a little bit on that second magnetic field. But I think that's what the elites are waiting for. But I'm telling you, Ransom, and the block wall is what I'm looking forward to, because we're going to get canceled sort of in the middle. They've done computer renditions on what it might look like. But it's so hard to explain even in English words that you're surrounded on two sides by glowing plasmas, but in a weightless, timeless space between the magnetic field walls. No viscosity, no flash point, no specific gravity, no pour points, no intervals, nothing. It just exists in a time-space bubble itself, loop. Now, I'm wondering what's going to happen with the regular physics are going to go out the window for a minute, but what's going to happen with the mind during this time? Or even leading up to it, we're getting into heavier gravitational fields, waning and depleting magnetic field on the planet, but outer gas giants are starting to line up more gravity and electromagnetism for us as we speak daily. So I don't know. I'm hoping that answered your question, because I did a ton of research to bring you that answer. I mean, like, dude, seriously, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours to figure that little bit out there. And I'm only talking about where they come into their, once they do that block wall and where they're going to sit it. You know, the new thing that's come to me is it looks like the Kabbalah. I'm so shocked. Like, if you go to Solar System Scope and you take off everything except to where the planets are, because there's a little settings bar on the side. You can remove the star field. You can move the planetary orbit where they actually follow around. You can remove that line, and you can take out the constellation names, and you can get it just to basically a sort of a black background with stars in it, you know, so you can see, and then line that up in October 2024, and I swear to you, you're looking at the Kabbalah. And, you know, I think that's what they would be waiting for in terms of their celestial alignment to return again. And Ransom, I would love to see that Mayan glyph or that Mayan drawing you have that they found that references 2024 end, because I want to see if there's any block walls represented in there or magnetic looping toroid fields represented in that. That most people might not look at that piece of iconography or that sculpture or whatever you would like to term it as, carving in rock, to mean that. But that's where I would look at specifically, is what representation of magnetic field canceling's in there, along with any type of electromagnetism, anything, you know, serpent might be a current flow, for example. There's a lot of things that could represent the energy moving and the density of the energy. If it's just electrons, could they glow? Yeah, I mean, you might have some like glowing serpent thing. What if it's plasma? Well, it can change color. It can go to pink, to blue, to white. It can just get all over the color spectrum in there. I mean, how do you represent that on a flat piece of stone? But there has to be that there so you could see it in a second and go, that's exactly what it is, once you know what you're looking for.
You know, I was picturing the shape of an Ankh, kind of, whenever you were talking about, you know, the placement of the planets there and the magnetic field it might make, but more like a three-dimensional Ankh, where it's a sphere, not a circle, and the middle, you know, is like that wall you were talking about, and then the bottom would be a line. But also think about all of these big eyes on all of the stuff that kind of represents either, you know, the inside of a you know, the vortex or the whatever, and you get to see the Z pinch in the middle of it. But think about if it was actually representing two giant spheres, and let me see if I can, you know, kind of decipher what you said. It sounded to me like you brought up the science of noise cancellation, which, if you know, like if you got some kind of noise and then you pick the right frequency, you can cancel it out where there literally is noise. And the reason I asked that's what you're saying is because if we were in that little in-between spot of the magnetic fields where they're pushing off of each other, it kind of sounds like there would be a moment of clarity where no outside forces are pushing in on your magnetic field. And then, like you said, later in the year, when you get on the other side of the sun, there would be nothing blocking the universal information from coming in. In other words, like when we would be protected, and it kind of makes you wonder, like, if some kind of outside of event happened, it would seem like we'd be protected for that year, but then the following year, we'd be totally exposed to not only all the cosmic rays of the universe, but also any projectiles, comets, asteroids, that are out there. In any, we would be totally unprotected except for our moon. Is that kind of what you're talking about there as far as the scenario? Not only the physical one with the planets, but the idea that you could be in a spot that's noise canceled, not noise, but it's kind of a cancellation scenario that's blocking out everything, where it would be like a moment of clarity. And then that happens right before you get to be in a position where an overload of information would be coming in from being the only planet out there on that side of the sun.
Well, during this alignment where we're going to be between the sun and those 4 gas giants out there in the middle of these 2 looping fields, out in front of the sun doesn't come until, May of 2025. But if you pull it back a little bit into October of 2024, that looping field, like there would be no magnetic fields in that. So you have to think about what would be delivered in terms of a download during that time, because your brain would not know how to function. I mean, even most of us that you consider sane human beings would not be able to function, because if you're losing the magnetic orientation of how your brain moves the electrical signals around it so you can think and have thoughts and do things, bodily function, whatever, move that arm, that's an electrical function that just happened because there's 2 different magnetic fields firing off in my brain. Now, if that all goes to 0, then you literally couldn't even think. There would be no process for you to even be aware of what was going on around you, unless it was an ethereal download that didn't involve any of the physical senses, that didn't involve your body's senses, but could be consciousness itself, far beyond the body. When you think about these downloads, they're not coming from, even if you're in the middle of 2 magnetic fields from a star and 4, unignited stars. I mean, the universe, the consciousness that created all of this is so much more powerful than that by so many orders of magnitude. I can't even fathom how many zeros would be behind that. Even if it's possible to think of orders of magnitude above and even quantify it in a number of how much more powerful. The consciousness that created all of this third-dimensional time space that we see with star fields in front of us, like that complexity. And it's not going to be able to deliver a signal between 2 little magnetic fields from 1 little star to 4 little unignited stars in 1 little tiny solar system amongst billions of stars in our galaxy itself, 100 billion stars, and we're just 1 little tiny star. But yeah, can you imagine what's going to be downloaded during that time? But it's going to be a specific set of circumstances with a canceling magnetic field on the human residence, on the brain, and literally everything on the planet. Like birds will experience it, reptiles will experience it. But how would the Earth experience it? Because the Earth being, take me a devil's advocate here, going to go 2 directions. Earth, a spinning object in space with a different polarity on the crust and the core. So just different magnetic fields, positive, negative. Our air is positive and the crust is negative, and they discharge sometimes or absorb charge, change charges. And that crust, the reason it's locked in and we don't really spin around on it too much is because it's magnetically locked to layers deeper down in the crust or down into the core for the rest of the planet. If there's no magnetic field, those don't lock anymore, so everything just kind of does its gingerly loop. But if it's in a weightless space, it probably wouldn't turn that much. That's on the planetary side. And then all of a sudden, whoosh, it goes back in. Everything locks back in like a trillionth of a second. Whoosh, that magnetic field locks again. And then everything restarts itself, but it's been refreshed. I could exactly see, because I talked to Robert Felix at length about this. Like, where do these evolutionary leaps come from? And that very well could be another one, triggered by the cosmic rays and the zero magnetic field and the block wall. And there's different things that go on sometimes that create a huge amount of movement, like the earthquake in Japan. We learned about plate tectonics. Things are supposed to move like a millimeter, like 1/3 of an inch per year. That's all the continents are supposed to move at. And then we had the Fukushima quake, and the entire island chain moved 8 feet. there's these orders of magnitude above kind of events that happen that cause huge shifts. And that's exactly what that block wall is one of these events. So I'm just trying to rationalize it too. I mean, all these things, and see, I don't know if it's the elite trying to cause as much scatterbrainness going into this magnetic field canceling wall to get a different outcome versus if we went into it with love. Like, the year 2000, man, I was so disappointed. 1999, come in, and then everybody was scared. They had the scare, the Y2K thing, and then there were like people putting suitcases and briefcases to go off at midnight or something in like Central Park. Don't enjoy yourself. It could have been the happiest party on the planet coming into the, the euphoria could have been so, like you would have vibrated out of your skin with just the excitement and the love around. If it would have gone that direction, you literally would have left your body in a consciousness state. That physical form would have been left there, but you would have been vibrating in a different way. And I tell you, that's exactly what they stopped. And when I say they, I'm talking the same nefarious players that are trying to control society and move it in directions from the central banks to the Bank for International Settlements, all these Bilderberger Group, everything you're hearing about with the Klaus Schwab reset, and all these politicians bought and paid for implementing policy dictated by, and who knows what it is, an entity that they're worshiping. I don't know. It gets a little bizarre sometimes, but I'm just curious if we're getting specifically stuck in like a staticky, clingy, weird, icky vibration to be pushed into this magnetic field versus going in it with pure love and light and everybody bonding together, entering this magnetic field, canceling state for just a moment. Like, what happens when you come out of it? Is everybody truly reset, or is it like the state you go in with, something happens with that? It either amplifies or decreases or whatever, but there's an outcome out the backside of that. I don't know, Ransom. I'm done rambling. I'm confused.
Confusion makes a lot of sense to me. And actually what you were just saying there made a lot of sense because, there's a saying, party like it's 1999. And there's a reason for that. It's people did party and have a good time. Some people went off the deep end, but the vast majority of the population was having a good time. And what happened? How did the government react to that? They gave us 9/11 a couple years later. But think about this also. I didn't even say download when I was talking, but that's exactly the idea that I was thinking about. It looks like for a period in 2024, you would be blocked off from the universe as far as a magnetic, situation. And that would give the powers that be an absolute opportunity to hijack and control the message. Also, anytime in the past that this ever happened, the general population didn't have the power, know-how, knowledge, access to even know that it might possibly be happening for them to sit and think about it for a second before it happened like we're doing now. They just couldn't have did that. They weren't aware of these factors like, magnetic fields, the position of the planets and all of that in the way that we are now. It's possible 50,000 years ago they were. They seem to have learned stuff. But think about that for just a second. Right before we're exposed to the information field of the entire universe, the galaxy, in the short area and the stars near us, all of these different messages coming out from different stars are available to us on, some kind of level. But there for a period before that, it's like they get the occult back in order. And this may be the event that they've actually been planning on. We always talk about, what is they planning for? What is it? What if it was something as simple as a magnetic alignment to decide the fate of humanity and which direction it was going? If they could control these downloads, and is it possible that people get downloads, but they also give away uploads? And the fact that, maybe in a certain circumstances, people can actually download from each other. And it seems like, we do that constantly whenever I say one thing and then you say what I was thinking about, and then it just goes in a fluid conversation. And I don't know about you, but I rarely ever prepare for this show. So I don't even know what we're going to be talking about most of the time.
Yeah, me either. It's just a go with it. And I can't explain it either, but, we do follow each other's thoughts pretty cleanly on that. And what kind of innate abilities are going to be given or taken during these magnetic field times? I mean, every time at least it seems to me, that as the magnetic field changes, the perception of humans changes as well. And perhaps that's the reason for more distraction, because If you're able to view and see more with your eyes, ears, would you not have to distract away from what you're seeing, or sixth sensibility, something growing inside that you're able to see through the illusions? Whatever it is that gives that clue away that it's an illusion. These abilities are enhancing and increasing as the magnetic field's declining. I was saying this many, many years ago. They're going to need to change the way they structure governments around the world because the new frequency brought on by that declining magnetic field. Humans are going to vibrate faster. We're already in a different kind of medium, if you will. It's a faster vibrating medium, and you can almost feel it, that things are moving faster. Because they're in a new magnetic vibrating field. And that was also shown by, well, you go back to with the Mayans and coming up with Aquarius and this whole era of time from, say, 2012, which could have been a misinterpretation also. We don't know exactly. But you can't tell me within 2012 to 2020, 21, in this 10-year period, out of at least 2,000 to 3,000 years of forecasting in the future, they all hit it on the head. All belief systems, really, all prophecy, everything talked about from supposedly disconnected continents, they all pinned to these couple years right here, and we're experiencing this right now. Really, that's a little hard to believe, man. I know a silly putty. I got to get out my silly putty man again to figure that one out.
It's a real curious thing because, when in the past has people actually sat around and thought about magnetic fields as being, or even electricity? And I wanted to point out, almost forgot that. You sent me that thing on Telegram, but while we still have enough time, about the sheep dying. And you remember when we were talking about that, when it was unknown what killed the cattle, and you were talking about, you really thought it was something from the atmosphere, above the atmosphere. And then it turns out, verified on another thing I was looking at, there indeed was some sprouts up above that area. So there was some kind of electromagnetic phenomenon. And I remember at the time I was talking about, the only time I've ever seen that was lightning. That's the only time.
Yeah, it was those halo sprites that look like a double-headed eagle in the sky. Is that the same one? That's crazy.
That's right. And that was right over that area. So you were right. We were right on the money of what that was, and it wasn't heat. So I didn't get to play this thing for them because I couldn't turn off the sound. But what's the deal with these sheep?
Same thing. It was a tear in the electromagnetic field that allowed that radiation to bombard them. But they were higher up in the elevation. And what's interesting is the Egyptians have the same stories, is where, the mountaintops fried and anybody there was like cooked into a microwave oven. Well, that's UVB or UVC radiation. But then at the same time, those on the shorelines were inundated by 1,200-foot tall waves. So they're talking cataclysmic events, but a tear in the magnetic field at this point would send UVB down to probably ground level. And this is, especially if the sheep were there at 3,000, 5,000 feet. You'd have to also look at the grasses and things to see if it was scarred or some sort of beyond what the animal deaths were. Is anybody taking a look at the plant life around there? Insect life, amphibian life, to see if it was also affected by the increasing radiation that seems to be taking these animals out, or electrified fields intensifying? Would there be a different magnetic resonance? Because, when they go into crop circles, sometimes they find different energetic fields and magnetic disturbances in there. Is anybody walking around with any types of the magnetometer to see if the magnetic field's different from the, a few steps away? I don't know. It seems a little strange for me, but they seem to be related. And, to see a double-headed eagle in the sky above that event, it's a little too quirky that, some of these elitist families that we've been referencing through here that still have control after thousands of years are the double-headed eagle. So did they see a plasma display in the sky and took that reference as their coat of arms? Because that double-headed eagle, that's really difficult to dismiss that one. And imagine if it goes orders of magnitude above, it would take the same shape, but it'd be more precise on where the beaks are. And however far out that plasma filament goes and starts, at the tendril at the end flashing and thing, it could literally look like beaks. And then out of those beaks came some sort of flashing thing, which would look like a serpent tongue or something like this. You ever have those globes where you put your fingers on it? Well, shoot one of those beams out of the end where it would look like a beak off of that giant double-headed eagle, and let that dance around in the sky for a while, and then put it so big that an entire continent sees it or the entire planet sees it, and then try to describe it. Well, good luck on that one, because I'm still searching for the words. Ransom, Godwin, thank you for joining me tonight. Mini Ice Age Conversations, Dave Dubyne. We got to sign off, out of time. Go watch out the Celestial Alignment tonight, 4:10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 4 hours from now. Check out the planets. It's a 900-year event.
Revolution